Thank you for inviting me here today. As John said, I've actually been at this 40 years. I spent 35 of those years actually in government in New York State, so the white hairs, all legitimate. And the job I have now is to, as far as this Internet Business Solution Group at Cisco, it's a pro bono consulting arm of Cisco. And what our job is to identify trends, to think of innovative ways to apply technology, go find a community somewhere in the world that wants to try this out, actually pilot or put a proof of concept together with them, and then share best practices. Pretty cool job. When I started, it was primarily in public sector with government. About 2 years ago, we broke down the way we operated into portfolios from smart connected cities, climate change, government itself, and one of them happened to be aging. And they asked if I'd take over this aging portfolio. Well, I went home and I looked in the mirror and immediately thought, human test tube. I can actually set up my retirement the rest of my life by doing this for the next 2 years. So I started out on this trek, and there was a couple of things that I learned early on. Nobody considers themselves old. It doesn't matter what age they are not in the aging population. Why that's relevant today is because everybody believes that they are outside of the trend. They continue to think of themselves as current. They continue to think of themselves as young. There was a bias that distorted investments. When we first started talking, it was to a lot of policy wonks and number crunchers at budget. And they continue to look at how to cut retirement pension benefits and how to spend money on long-term or assisted living care and build these facilities. The historical models have to be questioned. Our generation that's going through now, who do not think of themselves as old, are not looking for you to build us another big nursing home. We are looking for service and support that we can take with us wherever we are outside of that nursing home. And the last thing that's relevant to our discussion here is retirement was a negative word. I've retired twice now, yet I keep working. But when people talked about retirement, when I started as a young 20-year-old, 21-year-old, and they talked about retirement, I go, that's it. I can't wait till I hit 55, I get this check, and I do nothing for the rest of my life. That is not the paradigm anymore. We have to redefine the language that we speak when we're talking about healthcare and we're talking about community. We've done a couple of projects that I want to share with you, and then we'll get into some other examples. The first one was the city in the Netherlands. It's called Almere. It's a fiber-enabled city. It's been around just a few decades now. And what the mayor there asked us to do is come in because the aging population was the largest growing population of her community. And initially she said, how do I make my community attractive for aging older people to come want to live here and bring that experience and that steady income? So we started out pretty simple with this first one. We went to the very basics, and that was how do we apply collaboration and video into improving the health care, both physical and mental health care of that aging population. We started out with fitness classes. And in this particular class that we went to, there were a half a dozen or so women. It varied between 6 and 12. And all of them were 80 and older that would come in 3 times a week and do these exercises with one instructor. We started out by saying there's a limited number of instructors. The facilities or community centers in that particular city, there were 14 of them. And so they had to stagger when they could have the classes and who could attend. So we started very basic, simple things as let's use telepresence and have an instructor in one facility be able to instruct and see the participants in other community centers. We did that. It went over well. It was nice. But we started looking at this farther and saying that why aren't there more people here? We found that by the statutes inside the Netherlands, if you happen to have, say, a hip replacement, or you had some other kind of operation procedure or some limitation in your mobility range, that you weren't allowed to participate in these community fitness classes because there was no professional medical staff on board. And the instructor was trained in basic Red Cross. So we went and expanded and said, oh, we've got telepresence in the facilities, which means we can bring in anybody from anywhere. So let's bring in a physical therapist. So now what you have is a physical therapist virtually present in those classes that allows for the participants now, from those that are recovering from hip surgery, for example, to be able to participate. But you also now have, if that physical therapist, while you're doing your exercises, see a potential range of motion issue or some other potential health issue that may be lurking, they will offer for you a one-on-one consultation at the end of the class, again, using the same collaborative video environment. So we started with the simple instructor-led. We went to bringing in a professional. We went to consultation. And the next thing that the government there is willing to do with us is now take those people in need of physical therapy. And what they will do is, so if I was going to a physical therapist, and we do it today, and I go 4 times a week, I have to get up, I have to go there, I wait in the waiting room, I do my exercise while the physical therapist watches me, maybe does a little correction, and I go home. What we'll be doing in the Netherlands is you will go the first time. After that first time, it will be videoed. You take the video home. You put that on your TV. You watch the video. You do your exercise while you video yourself. You then upload your exercise that you performed. The physical therapist will look at it that evening and send you back instructions for adjusting, the same as they would if you were in the office, or they will send you new exercises to do. So we've now moved from simple one-to-one communication, where we're now taking that physical therapy aspect and the time it takes to travel to the physical therapist and the time it takes to do the exercise has now moved to virtual. Well, the other thing we did here in the Netherlands was the mental side of this. And so we started looking at the choir. And they have a gorgeous choir. In the U.S., we call it the Young at Heart Choir. Some of you may have heard this group. And they're older people, 60 and up, that get together and sing rock music, and they dance, and they do the robot dance and all this stuff on stage. What we found is those that were participating, those that came to sing, were active. They would come out, they would clean themselves out to come out, to be present, and they would engage socially. But they were dropping out. And we looked at why they were dropping out. It's because they had an illness or they had transportation issue and couldn't make maybe 2 or 3 rehearsals in a row. So what we did is we said we have to bring them in virtually so that they can continue to participate, keep active, and mentally active. And so we took, now what happens is, the choir master, so let's say you're my choir, and I'm at the piano and we're doing our rehearsal and you're singing along and I video you. I then take, when it comes to, and let's say it's Robert's solo or Robert's point, and Robert's not here today, I then give him instructions into the camera as though he was sitting here, and then I go back and we finish the choir, and then I upload that to you. That night, Robert would pick it up, he'd play it on his TV, he'd get the instructions at that time of the rehearsal as though he was there. He would then sing his part into the video, upload that to the choir master then looks at that, makes corrections. So Robert could actually be sitting out for 3 weeks on some kind of surgery and still be actively engaged in that choir practice. I said, you know, it didn't sound like that big a deal at first. I understood the mental aspect and mental health. But within a week after us showing this, the mayor had it on TV, the local television covered this, we started having people call and say, you know, my mother used to belong to the choir and she dropped out because she was in a wheelchair. I saw that. Is it possible for her to join in? So the mayor there is already getting people reaching out saying they want to once again be active. And isolation is the crippler that we have when we get older, and it's a tremendous healthcare cost. Another place that we've been into recently is a geriatric hospital in Canada. And what the issue there really becomes is they don't have the bandwidth to take on all the geriatric, dementia, and Alzheimer patients that they specialize in. There was a couple of places where we saw some opportunity to keep these people in their homes longer, whether it's their individual home or whether it's in a nursing home, a little longer. And one of those ways was by taking and revising the admissions process by applying video and collaboration. Today, if you had a parent that was having some dementia or behavioral problems, you would call up and get a caseworker on the phone. The caseworker is very skilled in interviewing you, but it was based on what you said and how you explained that scenario. A decision was made whether you would be admitted or whether you would get some verbal instructions on interventions you can take at home. The process works, but the process could work better. So what we're doing is, on the intake, we'll be applying video, so that when you call, you will be asked to take a video, whether it's from your iPhone, whether it's from a video camera, but you'll be asked to take video of the behavior and of the environment and describe the activities that led up to that behavior. Now, the advantage of this is now you have information, video, for a much more informed decision. A, do we admit them? If we admit them, we now have a better baseline to start the intervention once they're in the hospital to shorten their stay. If we don't admit them, because there are things that you can do at home by either changing just the setup of the room, may change the behavioral activity. Some of it may be if I give you certain instructions. I can tell you that, but if I can demonstrate that with the patient and send you the video, that's much, much more effective. So now the opportunity here is, one, you stay in your home longer, but it also improves the triage that's taking place in admissions into this geriatric hospital. While they're in the hospital, it's a community hospital. People come in from throughout the province. And so there's caregivers' concerns about the care that's being given, the need to know what's going on, the desire to know, and also that coming in every day and driving through traffic to get to this hospital so they can see what's going on. So what we're doing is we're using collaboration and video to include every caregiver in the transition plan. So as they're going through the interventions and the behaviors are changing, they will include the family, they will include the nurses, they will include any facility people that they may be going back to, they'll be including the doctor, psychiatrist, to talk about what do we do when we release this patient. And now it's time to release the patient. They will first have, I need to see the environment their person's moving back into. We applied these interventions for this behavior in this setting, and this is what worked. But they don't know what the environment looks like that they're going into. By being able to video that, they'll be able to go in and change the intervention methods so that when they get home, they have a greater chance of staying home. And they're going to use that same collaborative technology that they used to do the transition planning for support when they're home. So that if the patient acts up, instead of immediately saying you got to take them back, they'll go back to that same process, similar process up front. Video what happened, video the environment. Let's talk about some interventions you can take at home. We're doing this with geriatrics, but if you think about it, this works for emergency rooms, it works for doctor visits, it works for everything. And because collaboration can bring you in from anywhere, you can get the specialists that you need. I bring that up because here's some other things we've kicked around with communities. Some communities are interested, some agencies at government levels are interested. If you're interested, then let us know. One of them is applying video and collaboration into juvenile justice. We all talk about it in prisons and what you can do in prisons to train, bring in video and remote and telepresence type things. But what we're really looking at here is juvenile justice, where the recidivism rate in New York is about 70%. And a lot of this is when a child gets put into a facility, the training they get for a job when they get out, or the psychiatric help that they get when they get out, for when they're to release them, is based on what's geographically available. So if we can bring into that juvenile facility a specialist from anywhere in the world that can treat the problem that this child has exhibited, you have a much greater chance of them being able to break that behavior and move forward successfully. The other thing is, we talked to, it happened to be here in New York, we talked to them, and a couple of facilities, what they train them in is to be an auto mechanic. And that's what it was, because that's what was there. Well, I'm not an auto mechanic, and if I was in those things and you taught me to do that, I would be completely disinterested. I would be behavioral issue. On the other hand, if I can use the same technology I'm talking about for mental health, I can use it for physical health like I did at Baycrest. And now I can use, at that hospital, it was called Baycrest, and if I can now use this to do education, to give them a job in the market where they're going back to, that's relevant there, with the skills they need, their chances of success are much, much higher than they are taking best available at the facility at the time. There's borderless care. You've heard this terminology a lot. It's the concentration of specialists in an urban area. You need to work in a rural area. We know we can do that through collaboration and video. But if we're going to do it in the rural areas, then we should be able to do it with in-home caregivers. We cannot, hospitals and nursing homes cannot take on these number of aging people that are coming up. That healthcare cost would be too large. So we have to start working at people in the home, caregivers, wherever they happen to be, taking care of family and friends. In Stockholm, we were there last December, and we found out in Stockholm what they do is if you call in to the healthcare services and you need a caregiver in your home, they will guarantee you a caregiver the same day. Pretty nice service. Well, you pay for it, but it's a pretty nice service. So we started talking to Scotland. It has a lot of rural, and it's kind of that combination of the borderless. Says, hey, if we can get a person in a home the same day, then why can't we get them broadband connectivity within a 24-hour window, wherever they are, to start taking advantages of all these health practices that use collaboration in video and run on broadband? I don't know the answer. Why not? It just hasn't been tried yet over there. And then video, we talked about it, ER, collaborative support, et cetera. Some other things we're looking at. In Toronto, they have built at the University of Toronto, and I was talking to a gentleman here earlier from Toronto, they have this cube. It's a good-sized cube. It's like this. But they create the environment of that particular community. And they will build in curbs. They will build in traffic noise. They will build in lighting patterns from the buildings. They will bring in ice. It's Toronto. They will bring in ice and cold weather inside this cube. And then they look at the various technologies and products and how they can react and work inside that simulated environment. So if you think about the ability to simulate your environment, all kinds of weather, and make adjustments to a curb size, or if you put trees in a certain area to bring some shading in so the sunlight doesn't reflect on someone, how much dramatically are you changing and improving the quality of life and the cost reduction for your community? Community responders. Wander alerts is what we're hearing these things for. And so a lot of people know, and this gets people cranked up, but I'll do it anyways. Wander alerts are, I have some kind of tracking device on me. And it may be a tracking device that makes sure I do not leave the grounds of the nursing home I'm in. I may be an Alzheimer's patient. I may wander off. So we can track them. We know where they are, and you can go track them down. But think about adding to that a cadre of volunteers that when someone wanders off, John has drifted off and John is lost, or even John is just standing in one place too long and it's in the middle of the street, we know there's a problem. If I can identify through a cadre of volunteers that John is sitting here in Brooklyn at this particular address, and John is 2 blocks away, and I can alert John, he can bring up my profile, see my face, see a little bit about my background and where I live, and he can walk those 2 blocks and help escort me home. We don't have to call the police. We can do it with a cadre of people outside of the traditional government services. Same thing would apply if the water is running in my home, and it's been running for 30 minutes, and it just keeps running. I alert John. John lives next door. John can come over and check on me. So what we're doing is a cadre of volunteers to start becoming the caregivers that today is being done in nursing home and nursing facilities. Another thing we're working on is gamification. We're starting with entitlements because it just happens to be the #1 budget cruncher that we get around the globe. And gamification is to take the inputs. So instead of filling out an application and filling in the blanks, you will start playing the game. I'll use an example. I come home on a Friday night and my spouse, she beats me up. In today's environment, most people will wait till Monday morning until a facility opens up, and then we'll go in and ask for what kind of support. By Monday morning, she sweet-talked me into not doing that. With the game, I start the game, and I explain what happened. So I start the scenario, and it comes back with some immediate feedback and asks me some questions, but it comes back and says, here's 10 community shelters that you could go to, and here's 3 that have availability, and here's 2 that you can talk to somebody right now if you push this button. They start the dialogue. I start to get immediate intervention so this thing does not exacerbate and get much, much worse. As I go through the different levels of the game, I may find out that I need, it happens to be, I need some drug counseling because I was the one that was on drugs and actually started the incident. Or it may find that I need housing because I've left there, or I need daycare, I need a job. But using the game, instead of filling out applications, allows for some real-time feedback. It allows for a nice structure to move people through, but it also removes the latency between the time an incident happens and the time I can get career counseling or counseling from a caseworker. So we're looking at gamification there, and if we can make it work there, we can make it work in education, and we can make that work in the job market. The last thing I want to do for you with you is, this is a model we tested. As a matter of fact, we tested it first over in Australia. It's to make this happen and change in the world, there are 4 key elements. The first key element over on my left, the trends, it's the mega trends. We know global change, we know urbanization, we know aging, we know what these are. They're reality. We're not going to change them. You're not going to suddenly get rid of all the old people that are coming your way. What you need to do is understand all of those. So if I'm an aging specialist per se, I need to know what's going on in global change, because whatever you do here is going to affect the decisions and investments I make here. So you need to know beyond your particular discipline, and you look at all the major mega trends and how that works. Another thing, the decision makers are the individual. It's self-directed choice is what everybody asked us for. Nobody wants to be blanketed in that aging population. Everybody wants to say, me, I'm individual, I'm unique, I will make the decisions, I want the choice of how much support I need or want. The architects, that's you, and that's the private sector. You can't do it alone, private sector can't do it alone. Private sector will help drive the markets if you give them the right policies. The right policies are based on what your constituencies say they need, and the policies combined with the investment the government makes and the investment that the private sector makes are what's going to drive these innovations to address these mega trends. And then we always get into the discussion, the why. What are we doing this for? At the end of the day, there is only one set of benchmarks that we're going at: economic growth and social inclusion. Because at the end of the day, everything you do and everybody's primary desire is they want enough money to live on comfortably, and they want to be accepted by society and the society that they define. No more, no less. And finally, I'll leave you with this. The impossible only means somebody hasn't wanted it bad enough yet. Nothing is impossible. We talk about smartphones as a technology, and I'll give you this story as I leave. Years ago, back in mid-'80s, I guess it was, I was running one of the agencies here in New York, and I was talking to my staff, the middle managers. We're doing that career building. Here's where you're going. You know, this is the future. And I told them I had that old cell phone. You remember the ones about the size of a brick you used to carry around? But I had the old cell phone. And I told this group of about 40 of them, I said, in a few years, you will be doing spreadsheets, you'll be getting applications, everything on a device like this. And they all nodded. You know, they were all staff, so they're nodding. Yeah, sure, got it, director, got it. So last year, I ran into one of those. I was having lunch with one of those people that was on the staff back then. And he happened to pull out his BlackBerry, and he looks at it, and he starts laughing. I said, what's funny? He goes, I shouldn't tell you this, but I'm going to. He said, remember back in the mid-'80s when you came in and you told us all how we were going to have this smartphone, was going to have all these applications and everything on it, and we all nodded, and I didn't really remember. I said, oh, yeah, sure. He goes, and we nodded, yeah, John. He said, you walked out of the room and go, jackass, he doesn't know what he's talking about. So impossible is not impossible. Do not let anybody tell you your ideas are wrong. You can never stretch far enough. It's just a matter of finding the community that wants it bad enough to support you. And so on that, I thank you.